My name is Hannah, and this is my beauty budget. Hey y'all, so I'm about to get ready to film, and I decided to turn on the camera and film an old school style, kind of quick general get ready with me, in addition to filming the video I'm about to get ready to film. I am going to be using the NATASHA DENONA Gold palette on my eyes today. My sister gave this to me as a Christmas gift, and I've been meaning to try to find a way to work a review of this palette in on my channel, and this seemed like as good a way as any. I did ask for this for Christmas. It was one of a number of palettes on my wish list. I think I had this one, the Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction Mothership palette, and the Kevyn Aucoin Nude Pop palette. All three of those were on my wish list, and this is the one that my sister chose to get for me. And I didn't know which one I wanted the most of the three, and now I can't imagine having received one other than this. I've fallen head over heels in love with this palette more than I actually expected to, and I'll try to talk more about why I love it so much as I'm going along. This isn't a comprehensive review. I'm not going to swatch all the shadows for you. I'm just going to demonstrate the use of the product and then talk to you about what I like about it. Hi. Okay, so right before I zoomed in, I primed my lids with this Smashbox primer, and I want to make sure that the primer has time to kind of set and even dry down. So I'm going to talk to you about the transition shades in this palette. Before I owned the palette, one of my main criticisms of it was that the transition shades look so similar to each other, especially these three browns, but even looking in the monitor on camera, even the mustard one, it just looks so similar in tone, if not in color, to all of them. But owning this palette and using it, I've learned that it's one of those situations where the shadows look much more similar in the pan than they do when they are on the eye. And I actually think that they probably swatch more similarly even than they look when they're on the eye. But I can tell you that I have learned that there are really, really different uses and that I can get really different effects out of these four shadows. Yeah, I'm looking in the monitor now and they really look, they look the same, but they aren't the same to me. I appreciate all four of them, and I actually really understand at this point why NATASHA DENONA designed the palette this way with these formats. I think today I'm going to go with that really mustardy one in my crease. One of the things I really like about this palette, and the thing that I would actually like to demonstrate today because I'm planning to use the blues, is that there are a lot of golden yellows and there's that mustardy shadow, and then there are those blues. Blue and yellow make green, so you can get a lot of really grungy, good greeny looks out of this palette, even though it doesn't look like a green palette at first glance. I'm going to start slow by really placing this mustardy shadow into the crease and then blending it out kind of slowly. I've learned that with NATASHA DENONA shadows, it doesn't work as well to like fluff all over the lid and hope for the best. They're so pigmented and so fluffy and powdery that they can kind of go all over and get a little patchy on me if I do that. So I've been working through this palette with more careful and deliberate placement of the colors. So now that I've gotten the placement that I want with those shadows, it's in the crease, but it's also above the crease because I have hooded eyes. I'm going to go in with a clean, fluffy brush and try to blend out the edges. All right, now I'm gonna go in with this darker blue kind of creamy matte, and I think it's called Python. Yeah. And I'm going to go in with a smaller but still fluffy brush, and I'm just going to tuck that darker color into the depths of my crease and start blending it out and see what happens. I usually don't go with a cool toned color over a warm toned transition shade, but this mustard is so grungy and leans a little bit green, such that it can either lean warm or lean cool. It's a really versatile transition shade, and I'm gonna kind of be asking it to lean green today, so I don't feel too worried about going in with this blue on top of the yellow. There, I really feel like that added some depth and grunge and drama, which is what I'm going for. I'm gonna go ahead and go in with some eyeliner, which is actually what I usually do at this stage. I like to put on eyeliner before I start working with anything around my lash line. And I'm going to try using this little mini of a kind of turquoise Makeup Forever liner. So I'm just gonna go in with this and thickly line my upper and lower lash line and my waterline all over, and then go from there. All right, there's that done. I did an intentionally pretty messy job of smudging this liner all over my lash line. That's okay, it doesn't need to be precise. I just wanted to give something for the next layer of shadow to kind of stick to. I'm going to go in again with that more creamy matte shade Python on this little pencil brush. All right, to do some more work of that nature in the outer corner, bringing that blue shadow kind of a little bit higher up onto the brow bone, again because of my hooded eyes, I'm gonna go in with this little brush. This is a ColourPop E9. I don't usually tell you what brushes I'm using because all of my brushes are kind of like any pencil brush will do, any shader brush will do, any fluffy brush. But this is a brush that I use a lot that I think is kind of unique for its purpose. I really like this brush for more detailed outer corner work for hooded eyes. And now I'm buffing out the edges of that blue shadow using the small fluffy brush that I used to apply it into my crease. All right, that seems like a good base of mattes from which to work with some of these shimmers. I'm tempted to go in with one of these two, Lime Chrome, or this one down here. Those are the shimmers that have the most green reflect in them, but I want to use this other blue. So I'm gonna take this on my finger and apply it to my lid and then kind of go from there with building a greener, grungy look. So that sparkly blue shade is really a true topper shadow. I just tapped it all over everywhere where I had put down Python to make that blue base more dimensional. But now I think I'm actually gonna go in with this really rich, creamy shade right here. It's the one called Brass, and it's a thicker and more opaque shadow than Lime Chrome. I'm gonna get to Lime Chrome in a second, but I'm gonna start by putting down a little bit of this, more leaning towards the inner corner actually, and halfway across the lid. Okay, so I didn't actually put it in my inner corner, not all the way in the inner corner, but I rather applied it to, I would say, the inner third of my lid. And now I'm going to put Lime Chrome, this amazing duochrome, in the center of both of my lids, kind of wetting the two halves together. And again, because I have hooded eyes, I'm actually patting the shadow not just onto my lid, but above my lid. Like, look how high up my finger is going. I'm pressing it into my lid quite all the way up to the brow bone, right in the center, and that helps to give the illusion that my mobile lid is bigger than it is. All right, that looks gorgeous, but a good bit of Brass, the brighter and slightly yellower shadow, has gotten swallowed up with Lime Chrome. So I'm going to take this itty bitty little brush and I'm going to bring Brass all the way down into my inner corner. And I think I'm gonna go for the drama actually and draw it through my inner corner and down across the inner corner of my lower lash line as well. I'm not sure how well you can see, but I got a lot of fallout from that. That shadow Brass is pretty hard to work with a brush. It it almost doesn't pick up. It kind of feels like picking up flakes of gold leaf and then pasting the flakes of gold leaf onto the eye with a brush. It works really, really well with the finger. It foils really well, and it's harder to foil with a brush. It's doable, but you have to kind of treat it like you're working with a substance rather than with an eyeshadow. I guess an eyeshadow is a kind of substance. I'm actually going to go ahead and clean up some of this fallout and then get to work on my lower lash line. On my lower lash line, I'm going to just kind of buff it and smudge it out and kind of get it to be more grungy. Right now I feel like the look is looking very golden peacock, and I want it to look a little more green grungy. So I'm gonna grunge it up. I might even go in with a little bit of brown on the lower lash line on the outer corner. I'm just gonna clean up this fallout, and then I'm gonna kind of go at it trying to finish the look, and after I do that I'll tell you what I decided to do. All right, I'm not sure how much of that footage will end up having been usable, but what I did was I buffed out the lower lash line quite a lot using some of the blue sparkle and a lot of the matte blue, the creamy matte blue. And then I did go in with some of that brown. It's this color right here. I went in with that shadow on a little pencil brush and I packed it into the outer corner of my upper eyelid, the outer V, and smudged it across a little bit, and then I smudged it out on the lower lash line. And what that did was it didn't show up as brown, it just ended up darkening the blue and making the blue grungier. It gave the blue more dimension and kind of a little bit of duskiness and messiness, which is what I like in a look like this. So I did all of that, and then I cleaned up the fallout again. There is quite a bit of fallout with this palette, but it's worth it to me for these amazing finishes. So I'm going to apply a bunch of layers of mascara. I've been using this little sample size of the Hourglass Caution mascara, and I quite like it. It really does give me kind of like the wispy, gunky lashes that I love. So I'm gonna apply a bunch of layers of this, and then I'm gonna zoom out. So that's the eye look done with the mascara on. I'm actually really liking this mascara. If I really load up the brush and then I put on layer after layer after layer, giving some of the layers time to dry in between, it's awesome. It's just what I love. It's actually the only mascara I've ever tried that kind of rivals my IT Cosmetics Superhero Mascara, my all-time favorite. It doesn't do much good to have a dupe for my favorite mascara that's also a high-end product. It's just kind of good to know, so I can keep an eye out for more free samples of this guy. I really like the Hourglass Caution mascara. And this is how the look came out. I'm really glad I went in with the brown. It did grunge it up a lot. It still does look kind of peacocky and scarab beetle wingy, but it has that undertone of like grimy, grungy, slightly messy grittiness that I like for a look like this. I actually decided while I was putting on the mascara that I'm going to film my base as a separate video. I guess I'll have to put a note in the beginning of this video. I'm actually going to go and film that video now so that I can post a separate independent video all about how I apply my base without using foundation, because I think that that will be a better resource for people than a combined video. So I'm going to absent myself from this video for a little while and film the rest of my face and use that footage for a separate video. I'm going to cut right now to me with the whole look on, the completed look, and in the completed look I will give you some final thoughts about this palette. And we're back. I just filmed a whole other video, so I'm possibly a little disoriented, but I'm going to try to pick up right where I left off. As you can see, I've done the rest of my face. If you're curious what else is on my face, it'll be in the description box down below. I almost always put the main gigs that I used, like the main color cosmetics, in the description box down below in all of my videos. I don't always list out every single thing I used on my face, but it's usually the same few base products, and all of those will be demonstrated in the other video. Let's get to talking though about the gold palette. I'm actually going to zoom in real quick so that you can see the finished look on my eyes. I love it, and I have loved every single of the, at this point, probably 20 plus looks that I have done on my eyes with this palette since I opened it on Christmas Day. I don't want to get too gushy. I'm going to try to stay really specific actually in terms of talking about this palette. And in order to do that, I'm going to see if I can talk about any cons first. So one thing is that twice this shadow right here has fallen out of its pan. It's not that the pan has fallen out of the palette, it's that the entire chunk of shadow has fallen out of the pan. I don't know if any of you guys watch Tati. I'm sure many of you watch Tati. What am I talking about? I don't know if any of you remember NATASHA DENONA gate on Tati's channel last year where she opened one of those mini palettes and the shadow fell out. That has happened to me twice with this. And it falls out in a chunk. It doesn't get destroyed. You can just pick the chunk, or I have just picked the chunk up and just placed it back in the pan and then pressed it back in. It's obviously just a very soft shadow and it wasn't very firmly pressed into the pan. It was probably pressed just the amount that they wanted to press it to get it to be the texture they wanted it to be. And there's no adhesive between the shadow and the pan. So it fell out. And so I'm just aware of that. I try not to open it upside down because I don't want that to happen again. For me, and this is just a personal thing, I love black eyeshadow and I almost always use black eyeshadow to deepen a dramatic look. So it's always a con for me in a really dramatic and intense palette like this one when there isn't a black shadow. So that's one thing that I would wish for. But I have to say, and I feel like I'm already going to be getting into the gushing, that I kind of appreciate the fact that I feel guided by the hand of a very talented and experienced makeup artist in terms of the color selection that's in this palette. So, for example, this look, if there were a black in this palette, I would have used black in this look and it would have gotten blacker and more intense and smokier. It wouldn't have that kind of subtly blue-brown grunge that it has because I used the brown on top of the blue to make the look smokier. And I love this. I think it's more chic, more subtle, more modern than the look that I would have come up with if I had had a black at my disposal and if I had just done my same old thing. So I don't even have that as a criticism that there's not a black in here, because to me it leads me to do more NATASHA Denona-esque looks. It leads me to do more modern and more editorial looks, and I appreciate that. That's one of the things I love about this palette. My one point, or my main point of trepidation when I put this on my Christmas wish list, was versatility. I was worried that it would just be the same look over and over again, because there is no way to see when you just look at pictures of this, or even when you look at people demonstrating it, there is no way to see how extreme of a diversity there is among these eyeshadows. They all look so similar. It kind of looks monochromatic, but I have gotten so many different, dramatically different looks from this palette. Some of them look very, very yellow. Some of them have looked very bronze. Some have looked really green, like way greener than this, because I feel like this is leaning kind of greeny blue. Some have looked like really yellowy green, limey green, and reflective. I've gotten some really, really rich, deep, dusky brown looks from this palette, like really smoky and sexy, matte, modern brown beige looks from this palette, and I've gotten some super sparkly bright looks from this palette. I mean, I can't stop using it. It's actually, I mean, it's not becoming a problem because I do what I want even on my channel, but almost every eye look, if not every eye look in every video, could that be, that I've filmed since the beginning of the year? I've been wearing this palette in every video. And I took it with me to San Diego when we went to Vend at the Tango Festival, and I used it that entire weekend. I put a look on with this palette every day for 5 days, but they were 5 distinctly different looks. I find that this really yellow gold shade in the middle here can give a really, really yellow look. And one of my favorites actually is this one up here. I've really dug into that one. It's the one called Kava, and it's supposed to be just kind of a champagne topper, but it's like a gorgeous sparkly one. The bronzes in here, I think one of you once in the comments asked me, because I really love bronze eyeshadow, if I had a favorite bronze, or like how do you find a bronze that doesn't lean orange? And I was like, oh yeah, good question. Do I have any bronzes that don't really lean orange or that don't lean warm? And I remember I went through and I swatched a bunch of my bronze eyeshadows at that time, and I felt like they all leaned warm. But there are bronzes in this palette that don't really lean that coppery. Oh my gosh, look at that shiny second one. I know that you guys have seen people swatching these shadows all over, and I don't know why I'm even doing this, because my point here is that you can't see on camera how special it is. I did want to swatch this kind of like grungy brownie shimmer. That is a really, really pretty cool toned bronze, and that's special to me. That's something I've been using a lot for like a single shadow all over the lid look. So I'm gonna stop swatching and gushing about the individual colors, because I don't think that that's the thing that I can be the most useful in terms of here. I don't think that that's like my best use in terms of reviewing this palette. The point that I was trying to make is just that it's much, much, much more versatile than I expected. And I feel like there are still shades of bronze and brown and green and yellow and gold that I will be able to get out of this palette that I haven't gotten yet. And I feel like every single look I've done with it has been distinctly different. So that was a pleasant surprise. I actually think that the main point, my main point, the thing I really want to say, and the thing that I feel like is the most relevant in the context of my channel and my purpose here on YouTube, the main thing about this for me is that it is so good for me that it has prevented me from buying any eyeshadow so far in the month of January, even though I now have my budget at my disposal. And I have a feeling that it's going to prevent me from buying almost all eyeshadow during the entire year of 2019. I don't imagine I'm going to come across any palettes or many shadows that I can envision myself loving more than I love this. It's like once you have something that's so great, that's so perfect for you, and it's really in many ways specific to me because I love these colors. I love grungy greens and golds and bronzes. That is my entire wheelhouse. That's what really gets my juices flowing when it comes to eyeshadow. So once you have that, everything else can be stacked up against that and then not measure up, and then that can be a good reason not to buy the other thing. And that's something that I learned. I think if you watched my video about my first shopping trip during my no-buy year, I talked about that with the ruffle sweater, how every piece of clothing I came across in Aritzia, I was like, well, I like this, but it doesn't make me feel the way that that sweater makes me feel, so I'm not gonna buy it. This is gonna be that for me for makeup this year. Every time I'm tempted to buy eyeshadow, I'm gonna think to myself, could this possibly measure up to the gold palette? And if the answer is no, then I'm gonna say to myself, well, then I would rather use the gold palette another time. I would rather use the gold palette that day than use these other eyeshadows. And then the second reason is kind of related to that, and it just has to do with the fact that eyeshadows don't last forever. My Modern Renaissance palette has completely expired. I tried to use it on my eyes and it was like using ashes. It was truly terrible. I've never had that experience of having a shadow palette go off, and it really brought me up short. I was like, whoa, my palettes are expiring. Dropping like flies, one by one. Like, this is the first one, but they're all gonna go. And that made me really not want to buy more eyeshadow. I really want to use the ones I have while they're still good, especially the really expensive ones. Like, what a shame would it be if this gorgeous palette that I couldn't have afforded to buy myself ever, but that my generous sister bought for me as a gift. I say couldn't have afforded because I don't think I would have been willing to spend more than half my budget in a month on this. Obviously, I could have decided to do that, but I wouldn't have. So it was so lovely that I received it as a gift. It's so precious. It's worth so much money. What a shame would it be if I flooded my collection with a bunch of new eyeshadows this year and didn't get to use this one as much, and then in a year or two it went bad, when it is such a dream to me. What a shame that would be. So I'm really, really reluctant to do that. I just want to use this now. I want to use my other eyeshadows too, right? When I say I just want to use this, I'm kind of putting it up on a pedestal as the thing that exemplifies wanting to use what you have. My main review, my main personal feeling about the Natasha Denona Gold palette is that it is the palette for me that kind of puts all palettes in perspective. And I'm not saying this so that you will go out and buy this, although if you have exactly my same tastes in eye makeup and you have the budget for this palette, it's great. I mean, what can I say? But that's not the point of this. The point of this is that I want to know what that palette is for you, something that you already own. What is the eyeshadow palette or the piece of makeup, like the lipstick or the bronzer or the blush, whatever it is for you that you're really into, what is the piece of makeup that puts all the other makeup into perspective, that makes you realize that you could just use that one and that it's the best for you, and that is a reminder to you not to buy a bunch more stuff that isn't as good as that one that you love. I think it's helpful to have that thing. It's helpful to remember that thing and to hold it in your mind when you start feeling yourself getting drawn down that path towards wanting a bunch more new stuff just because it's new and novel. And the last thing I'll say about it is that you don't need the gold palette to get this eye look. If you have a mustard eyeshadow, which I think a lot of us do at this point, a matte mustard, and you have some kind of teal green, some kind of like rich teal green, and you have a foiled gold, which we all have, you can get an eye look really similar to this. I really like working with these eyeshadows. I really like the finishes of these eyeshadows, the sparkles, but you can dupe the vibes of this pretty easily. Like this palette isn't really about the color story. It is about the finishes of the shadows. And if you love these colors and you don't have the budget for this, don't be sad. Dupe the vibes. Look at pictures of the palette online and look at the eyeshadows in your collection and do the looks that you would be doing on your eyes with this, using the eyeshadows that you have. There won't be that much of a difference between what you are doing on your eyes and what I'm doing on my eyes over here with this eyeshadow palette. There are other ways to get really glittery glitter on your lids. There are other ways to get a really foiled effect with eyeshadow. There are a lot of other ways other than buying this palette, and I'm sure that many of you already own the tools for those ways. I hope that's helpful. This was kind of a scattered bananas review, but I think it will make sense why I said what I said about this palette. The short story is that I really love it, and it makes me want to just use what I have for the rest of the year and not buy any more eyeshadow. That is it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you will remember to take extra good care of yourself this week so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.